My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 32 years old, and I still have a scar on my left palm from a circular saw that slipped when I was 19 and too stubborn to ask for help. 3 weeks before my sister's engagement party, my mother called to tell me I wasn't on the guest list. Not because we'd argued, not because I'd done anything wrong, because my sister Paige said having me there would make things uncomfortable with Derek's family, and Derek's family had a certain idea of what Paige's family should look like. My mother said, "You understand, right, sweetheart? The Holloways are very established. Derek's father is a federal judge. His mother went to Wellesley." I said, "I understand." I didn't tell her that Judge Holloway had already signed a purchase agreement with my company for $47,000 this year. I didn't tell her that Derek's mother had been emailing my project manager for 6 weeks about the renovation on their lake house. I didn't tell her that in 4 weeks, at a ceremony 2 miles from my parents' house, I'd be standing at a podium in front of 200 people, and my family would finally see that the daughter they'd been hiding behind explanations and polite redirections had built something they couldn't condense into a sentence. They never asked what I was building, so they never knew. It started when I was 21. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house in Naperville, Illinois, a suburb of brick colonials and carefully edged lawns 40 minutes west of Chicago. My father was reading the Tribune. My mother was going through mail. Paige was on the couch doing something on her laptop for her marketing internship. I said, "I'm not going back to DePaul in the fall. I enrolled in an apprenticeship program through the Carpenters Union." My mother looked up. My father put down his paper. "A carpenter," my mother said. "Not a question. The way someone says a diagnosis." "I want to build things," I said. "I want to work with my hands. I'm good at it." My father rubbed the back of his neck. "Nora, it's physically brutal work. Your body gives out. You'll have no retirement security, no benefits, unless you're in the union your whole career." My mother set down an envelope she'd been holding. Sarah Hennigan's daughter just started her MBA at Northwestern. Kevin Doyle got into the architecture program at IIT. Just other people's children, pursuing more explainable things. Paige glanced up from her laptop. "You're going to, do construction? For a living?" "I want to run my own contracting business eventually," I said. "I'm starting from the ground up." She shrugged. "Okay, if that's what you want." My mother touched my arm. "We just want you to be stable, honey. Stable, the way some people say normal." What she meant was legible. What she meant was something they could explain at church without watching someone's expression shift. What she meant was, "Don't make us translate you." "This is what I want," I said. My mother smiled. The closed one. The one that said she'd already categorized this as a phase. "Well, we'll support you, of course." I learned what that word meant over the next 10 years. It meant they showed up when it cost them nothing and looked away when it required anything at all. Every Sunday we had dinner at my parents' house. Pot roast, sometimes lemon chicken. Always the same blue placemats, always the same seats. And every Sunday my mother asked Paige about her job. Paige worked in brand strategy at a firm in the Loop. She wore blazers. She talked about client pitches and rebranding campaigns and whether her agency was going to land the regional healthcare account. My parents ate it up. My father asked follow-up questions. My mother glowed. Then she'd turn to me. "How's work going, honey?" That was all. Not "What are you building?" Not "What did you figure out this week?" Not "Tell me about the project you're managing." Just "How's work?" The same voice you use to ask a child if they finish their vegetables when you don't really care either way. When I completed my apprenticeship at 23, my father said, "Good for you, kid." My mother asked Paige whether the agency had given her a title bump. When I got my contractor's license at 25 and registered Callahan Build, LLC, my mother said, "Just be careful, Nora. Construction companies have very thin margins. Then she asked Paige about her new apartment in Lincoln Park. I stopped volunteering information after year 3. I stopped waiting for them to ask. But I kept working. I kept building. By the time Paige called me just her sister who does construction, Callahan Built had completed 94 projects, employed 18 people, and brought in $2.1 million in revenue the previous year. I personally cleared a $190,000 after payroll, materials, insurance, and overhead. Paige made $68,000 managing brand voice for a company that sold subscription razors. But every Sunday my mother asked about her accounts, and every Sunday she asked me, "How's work, honey?" The call came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd just gotten back from a walkthrough on a kitchen remodel in Wheaton, a gut renovation, down to the studs, the kind of project I liked best because there were no shortcuts. My work boots were by the door. I had drywall dust in my hair and a new bruise on my forearm from where I'd caught the edge of a header beam. My phone rang. Mom. Tuesday wasn't a calling day. We talked Sundays, and even then it was short. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. That voice. Measured. The one she used when bad news was on its way wrapped in something soft. How are you? Fine, just got in. What's up? So, Paige's engagement party. She paused. I waited. We're doing it at the house, November 8th, and I need to talk to you about the guest list. I set my keys on the counter. Okay. Derek is bringing his whole family. His parents, his sister, aunts and uncles, and they have a very specific way of doing things. His father is a federal judge and his mother is involved with the junior league, the symphony board. Mom. Paige she asked if maybe this one could be kept to immediate family only on her side. To keep it from getting crowded. I'm immediate family, I said. I know, honey. But Paige is worried that if your work comes up, it might be hard to explain to people like the Holloways. She doesn't want Derek's parents to get the wrong impression before they even know us. What impression would that be? She was quiet for a moment. She said she doesn't want his parents asking questions about what you do and then looking at her differently because her sister works construction sites. Something went cold in my chest. I looked at my hands. Chalk line on my right thumb. Dried caulk in the crease of my knuckle. I'd been on my feet since 6 that morning, so I'm not invited, I said. It's just the engagement party. The wedding. It's fine. Nora, I understand. And I did. Thank you, sweetheart, my mother said. The relief in her voice was immediate and it turned my stomach. We hung up. I stood in my apartment, the one I'd renovated myself over 8 months when I first bought it. The place nobody in my family had ever once asked me to walk them through. I stood there and didn't cry. I just thought about when I became the thing my family needed to explain away. They never asked, so they never knew. Year 1. I launched Callahan Build in May 5 years ago. I was 27 with a contractor's license, a used pickup, a laptop, and a storage unit full of tools I'd been accumulating since my apprenticeship. I had $14,000 in savings, a business checking account, and a website my friend Tess built for me over a weekend. My first project was a deck rebuild in Downers Grove for a retired couple named the Okabis, $6,200. I did most of it alone. When I told my family at Sunday dinner, I started my own company, Callahan Build. My father looked up from his chicken. You sure about the timing? Market's weird right now. My mother smiled. That's great, honey. Just don't overextend. Paige was on her phone. Cool, she said, without looking up. Year 2. I hired my first employee, a Finnish carpenter named Joe Serrano. He was 52, had been doing custom millwork for 30 years, and had a precision with crown molding that made grown adults stop talking mid-sentence to watch him work. He was the first person to ever tell me, "You run a tight job site." I held on to that for months. When I mentioned at Sunday dinner that I'd taken on my first full interior renovation and brought on staff, my mother nodded and turned to Paige. Did your agency get the healthcare pitch? Year 3. I landed a $90,000 commercial contract, a build-out for a dental group opening a second location in Elmhurst. 6 weeks, coordinated flooring, electrical, HVAC rough-in, cabinetry, custom millwork. I was on site every day at 6. We came in 3 days early and $4,000 under budget. The office manager sent me a handwritten note afterward. Every contractor we interviewed promised us smooth. You were the only one who delivered it. She referred me to 2 other practices. By the end of year 3, I had 8 employees and $680,000 in revenue. I told my parents we'd had a strong year. My father said, "Make sure you're setting aside for taxes." Paige said she'd just been promoted to senior strategist. My mother made her a card. Year 4. Revenue crossed $1.3 million. I moved into a proper office space in Lille, hired a project manager named Yolanda who had run commercial construction for a national developer and was tired of never getting credit for it. I bought a 2-bedroom condo in Elmhurst, 1,100 square feet. Needed a full kitchen and bath update. I did the work myself on weekends over 4 months, with Joe helping on the tile when his schedule cleared. My parents visited once. My mother said, "It's really coming together, honey." My father turned on the faucet in the kitchen, checked the pressure, nodded. "Good install," he said. That was the most interest he had ever shown in anything I owned. Year 5. Callahan Build was on track to close the year at $2.3 million. 18 employees. 4 project managers including Yolanda. We'd completed 94 projects. Average contract $22,000. Our biggest single contract had been a $210,000 full gut renovation of a historic 1920s farmhouse in Geneva for a couple who had seen our work on House and reached out without a referral. The wife cried when she walked through the finished house. She posted about it, and that post found its way to the Illinois chapter of the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. In September, I got an email saying Callahan Build had been nominated for the NARI Contractor of the Year Award, Residential, under 40. I read it 4 times. Told Yolanda. She stood up from her desk, told Joe. He said, "Well, yeah." I didn't tell my parents. In March, I'd gotten a project inquiry from a couple in Lake Forest who had seen our farmhouse renovation and wanted to discuss a full remodel of their lake house on the North Shore. The contact name was Sandra Holloway. Her email was precise and well organized. She knew exactly what she wanted. Open concept first floor. New primary suite addition. Full window replacement to maximize lake views. Heated floors throughout. She'd done her research. She asked the right questions about our process, our subcontractor relationships, our timeline guarantees. We met at the property in April. She was 63, tailored. The kind of person who noticed when something was 2 inches off center without using a tape measure. She walked every room with me, asked detailed questions about load-bearing walls, asked whether we could source reclaimed wood for the ceiling beams, asked about our dust containment process because she had antiques she wasn't willing to relocate. "I've had 3 contractors through this house," she said, standing at the window looking out at the lake. "You're the first one who looked at the bones instead of just nodding along." "The bones are good," I said. "We won't need to fight them." We signed a $47,000 contract in May. Yolanda handled scheduling and logistics. I handled the design, communication, and site oversight. Sandra called me Nora on site. She saw a woman in work boots running a crew. She didn't ask about the size of the company behind me. I didn't tell her. In June, during a design review meeting at the property, she mentioned her son was engaged. "He's wonderful," she said, distracted, looking at tile samples. "His fiancée is a sharp girl, works in marketing in Chicago." "That's nice," I said, measuring the window opening. She didn't say the fiancé's name. It wasn't relevant. It wasn't my business. And I didn't know then that the fiancé she was describing was my sister. I didn't know that when Paige described me to Derek's family, she said my sister works construction sites. I didn't know she'd said at a dinner in Wintaka that I was the family's rough edge. I didn't know that Sandra Holloway, when she heard works construction sites, had pictured someone very different from the woman who had just redesigned the structural flow of her home. They never asked. So they never knew. And in 4 weeks it was all going to come apart in the most public room in DuPage County. The project wrapped in September. Sandra walked through the finished house and stood in the primary suite looking at the lake through the new floor-to-ceiling windows, and didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Then she said, "This is exactly what I saw in my head and couldn't explain." She wrote us a 5-star review on 3 platforms and submitted Callahan Build's name to NRI herself. I didn't know that until later. 2 weeks after we finished her house, my mother called to uninvite me for my sister's engagement party. The morning of the NARI Awards, November 22nd, I woke at 5. Made coffee. Stood at my kitchen window watching the sky come up gray over the parking lot. The kind of flat Midwest sky that means weather by afternoon. I wasn't on any calendar that mattered to my family today. I'd been uninvited 2 months ago and hadn't spoken about it since. I drove to the job site instead, a bathroom addition we were framing in Westmont, not because there was anything urgent, but because I needed to use my hands. I pulled on my Carhartt jacket, unlocked the site trailer at 6:30, pulled the framing plans and walked the layout. Joe met me at 7, took one look at my face, and handed me a coffee without asking anything. I worked until noon. Framing is meditative for me the same way it's always been, the sequence of it, the way each piece of lumber has exactly one right position, the satisfying thunk when a stud seats flush. It quiets everything that won't stop moving in my head. I drove home at 12:30, showered, stood in front of my closet for longer than I'd like to admit. I had one dress I wore to anything that required one, navy, simple. Something a woman in construction buys when she realizes awards ceremonies exist and she owns nothing appropriate. I put it on, pulled my hair back. I looked in the mirror and for a moment didn't recognize myself outside of a hard hat. I drove to the Drury Lane Theater in Oak Brook. The NARI Illinois chapter holds their annual awards dinner there every year. 200-something people, contractors and architects and suppliers and industry reps, the whole ecosystem of residential building in the greater Chicago area, gathered into one ballroom with rubber chicken and open bar. I found my table. Table 6, the nominees section. Shook hands with people I recognized from job sites and trade shows, sat down. Opened the program. Under Residential Contractor of the Year. Under 40, 3 names. Nora Callahan, Callahan Build. 2 others I knew professionally, both good, both deserving, I'd known for 6 weeks. I told Yolanda and Joe and no one else. I scanned the room while the salads were being set down. Supplier reps, city planning officials, a few real estate developers I'd done work for. And then I saw them. Table 14. Derek in a dark suit. My sister Paige in a red dress, hair curled, laughing at something Derek's sister was saying. My mother in the silver-gray top she wore whenever she wanted to look put together. My father looking stiff in a blazer the way he always did when my mother made him dress up. And Sandra Holloway, across the table from my mother, in a winter white blouse, perfectly composed. My breath went shallow. Of course. NARI was a major sponsor in the contractor and developer world. Derek was a commercial real estate attorney. His firm probably had a table here every year. He brought the family, brought my parents, an opportunity to show Paige's world to his. A networking dinner, doubling as family bonding. They had no idea I was in the room. I turned back to my table. My heart was doing something loud. I picked up my water glass and kept my hand steady. Dinner was served at 7. I could not tell you what it tasted like. I was watching table 14, the way you watch weather you know is coming. My mother was charming Sandra, that was clear from across the room, leaning in, touching her wrist lightly, laughing at the right moments. My father and Derek's father were in what looked like a real conversation, which surprised me. Paige was glowing. This was the version of the family she wanted the Holloways to see, polished and warm and complete. Without me. At 7:40, the chapter president took the stage. She was 60, efficient, with the kind of authority that comes from actually knowing the industry. She thanked the sponsors, went through the introductory remarks, and then said, "Let's move on to what you're all actually here for. We'll begin with our residential categories." At table 14, Sandra straightened in her chair. This was her industry, adjacent if not direct. An event planner marries into a contractor family. She would pay attention to this category. The residential contractor of the year, under 40, recognizes a business owner who has demonstrated exceptional project quality, consistent client satisfaction, and significant revenue growth, all before the age of 40. This year's nominees are... A slide appeared on the screen behind the stage. 3 names. My name was the first one. I watched it happen from across the room. Sandra saw the screen first. She went still in a way that reads different from regular stillness. The kind that happens when something doesn't compute and the brain stops everything else to process it. She leaned toward Derek and said something. He looked at the screen. I watched his expression move through recognition and then into something I could not name from 40 feet away, but recognized anyway because I've seen people realize they've made a serious mistake. He said something back. His jaw was tight. Paige followed their gaze. She found my name on the screen. Her hand went to the base of her wine glass and she didn't pick it up, just held it there. My mother noticed. She looked at Derek, then at the screen, then at Paige. Her mouth opened slightly. My father looked last. He squinted at the projection the way he does when he's not sure he's reading something right. Then, he sat back in his chair and was very still. At table 6, I didn't move. The chapter president was reading from the program. Nora Callahan, founder of Callahan Build, has completed 94 residential and light commercial projects in 5 years, maintains a 4.8-star average across all review platforms, employs 18 full-time staff, and is projected to close this year at $2.3 million in revenue. Callahan Build was nominated in part by client Sandra Holloway of Lake Forest, who described the company's work on her home as, quote, "the clearest example of what craftsmanship actually means." Sandra's hand went to her mouth. Paige turned to look at Derek. He was looking at the table. My mother reached for my father's arm, and the chapter president opened the envelope. The NRI Illinois Residential Contractor of the Year, under 40, is Nora Callahan, Callahan Build. The room applauded. A spotlight found me. I stood. My legs felt borrowed, but they held. Joe was in the back of the room. I'd given him a ticket, told him it was a networking thing, not let on that I was nominated, and he was on his feet. The old Finnish carpenter who'd spent 30 years watching other people take credit, clapping with both hands above his head. I walked to the stage. I passed within sight of table 14. I let myself look for exactly 1 second. My mother's hands were flat on the table in front of her. My father's face was the face of a man running calculations he doesn't know how to finish. Paige was looking at Derek. Sandra Holloway was looking at me, and her expression was the one I know from job sites, when something turns out better than the drawings promised. I climbed the stairs. The chapter president handed me the award, a heavy square of walnut with a brass plate inset, the kind of thing that actually has weight, and shook my hand and stepped back. 200 people looked at me. "Thank you," I said. My voice was level. 5 years ago, I opened a business account with $4,000 in it and a truck that needed a new alternator. The plan was simple: show up on time, do the work right, treat people's homes like they matter, because they do. I paused. 18 people work at Callahan Build now. They are tradespeople and project managers, and people who have spent their careers being underestimated. This award belongs to them before it belongs to me. Another pause, and I let it sit. To everyone who trusted us with their home before the name meant anything, thank you. You saw what we were building before we could prove it. I stepped back. The applause came up louder. I walked off stage, sat down, and found a glass of water in my hand. My phone was face down on the table. I turned it over. A text from my mother. We need to talk. I set it face down again. The program ended at 8:30. People moved toward the bar and the open areas between tables. I was talking with an architect I'd worked with on a townhouse project in Wheaton when I felt someone standing near me and turned. My mother. She was pale, standing very straight in the way she does when she's holding herself together through will alone. My father was a half step behind her, looking like a man arriving at a conversation he knows he can't talk his way out of. Nora, she said. The architect glanced between us. I'll catch you later, Nora. Congratulations. She left. My mother stood there, clutching her small beaded evening bag with both hands. We didn't know, she said. I know you didn't, I said. Why didn't you? This is a real company, Nora. It's been a real company, Nora. It's been a real company for 5 years, I said. You knew that. Not like this. Her voice dropped. Not at this level. What level did you think I was at? She didn't answer. My father stepped forward. Nora, we owe you an apology. He said it plainly, which I hadn't expected. He's not a man who leads with that sentence. I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't understand what you were doing because I never made the effort. That's on me. I looked at him. 61 years old. The man who'd sat at that Sunday table every week asking about Paige's accounts and asking me how work was going as if it were background noise. I tried to tell you, I said quietly. Year 3, year 4, year 5. I mentioned contracts and employees and revenue at dinner, and every time the conversation shifted to Paige before I finished the sentence. My mother's eyes filled. I know, she said. I know. Excuse me, I said. I know. Excuse me, I said. I need to find my colleague. I moved past them. I made it 8 steps. Nora. Paige's voice. I stopped. She was standing near one of the high-top tables alone, arms crossed, not in the defensive way but in the small way, like she was trying to take up less space. Derek wasn't with her. I turned. I didn't know it was like this, she said. You didn't know because you never asked. You never once asked what I was actually working on. Not in 5 years. Her jaw tightened. I thought. I know what you thought. You told Mom I'd embarrass you in front of Derek's family. Me, your sister, because I show up to job sites. She looked away. There was something working in her face that I recognized from when we were kids, and she'd done something she couldn't undo and knew it. Sandra nominated you, she said, quieter. Derek's mom. She submitted your name. I know. She came up to me right after the announcement. Paige's voice went thin. She said she'd been trying to explain to Derek for weeks what kind of businesswoman his fiancé's sister was. She said she wished someone had told her sooner. A pause. Derek's embarrassed. Not of you. Of me. Of what I said about you. I let the silence hold. You should have been there, she said. To Dad's party. To the engagement party. I should never have. No, I said. You shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Nora. I looked at her. My sister. 4 years younger than me. She'd grown up watching me do things with my hands and never once understood that the hands were also doing something bigger. I know you are, I said. I'm going to need some time. She nodded. Her eyes were wet. Okay, she said. Okay. I walked away. I found Joe at the bar, nursing a club soda, watching the room with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has spent decades being proven right about things. "You going to tell me now?" he said. "Tell you what? That you were nominated? Would that have mattered?" "I would have worn the good jacket," he said. I laughed. First real one of the night. I stayed another 40 minutes, talked with people I respected, thanked the chapter president, put the Walnut Award under my arm, and walked out into the November night. 28 degrees. I could see my breath in the parking lot light. I sat in my truck with the heat running and looked at the award in the passenger seat. They'd had 5 years to ask. Tonight I made sure they couldn't pretend they hadn't heard. The email from my father came 3 days later. Thursday. 5:50 in the morning. Subject line: "I'm sorry, Nora. I've been trying to figure out what to say since Saturday. I'm not going to overthink it anymore. I should have been paying attention for years and I wasn't. I sat at that table on Saturday night and watched my daughter's name on a screen in front of 200 people and realized I don't know what you've built. That's my failure, not yours." I asked about Paige's work because I understood what an account was, what a campaign was. "I didn't understand what you were doing because I never tried to learn. I'm ashamed of that. I'm proud of you. I should have said that 10 years ago. I'm sorry. Dad." He signed it Dad. Not his name, not his initials. Dad. I read it twice, put my phone down, stared at the ceiling of my apartment for a long time. My mother texted at noon. "Can we meet this week? Just us." I replied, "Coffee. Saturday. Harvest Moon Cafe on York, 9 a.m. She replied in under a minute, "I'll be there." Paige left a voicemail that evening, and I could hear in the first 2 seconds that she'd rehearsed it and then abandoned the script. "It's me. I know you're not ready to talk, and that's fair. I just need you to know that I talked to Derek and I told him everything I said about you, and I told him it wasn't true. His mom already knew that. I think I've had a version of you in my head that wasn't you. It was just easier than looking at you clearly and feeling like I came up short." A long pause. Derek said he'd uninvite his own sister from something before he'd uninvite mine again. He also said his mom has been talking about your company at every dinner for 3 months and he wishes someone had told him sooner. Another pause. "I love you, I'm sorry." 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I listened to it twice. Then I called Joe and told him about the award, finally, and he said, "I know, I looked it up, and that was the whole conversation, and it was enough." Saturday morning. Harvest Moon Cafe. Dark wood, the smell of fresh bread and good coffee, the particular quiet of a weekend morning before the room fills up. I got there at 8:50. Ordered a black coffee. Sat by the window. My mother arrived at 8:57. She was in jeans and a gray fleece, no real effort at presentation, which told me everything about what she thought this morning required. She sat down. Ordered the same as me. Wrapped both hands around the mug before it was even hot. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. I nodded. "I don't know where to start," she said. "Start with why." She took a breath. "I spent 23 years as an office manager at a law firm. I watched people with degrees, people who weren't smarter than me, weren't more capable, walk into positions I'd earned 3 times over. I thought if you and Paige took the professional path, the college path, the office path, nobody could do that to you." She looked at her coffee. "When you said the union, when you said construction, I heard every job site story about women being run off, being underpaid, being invisible. I was trying to protect you from that. I built a company," I said. "I know that now. You knew it before Saturday. I told you every year." "I didn't hear it," she said. "I was looking for the shape of success I recognized, and yours didn't look like that to me. I was wrong. I was wrong about all of it." Her voice was careful, deliberate. You didn't need me to protect you. You needed me to pay attention. Yes, I said. I'm sorry I didn't. I'm sorry we made you feel like something to be explained away. Her eyes went wet, but she didn't look away from me. I never wanted that for you. I know, I said. We sat quietly for a moment. I need you to know something, I said. It's not about the money or the award. It was never about proving something financially. I needed you to be proud of the work, not proud of me in spite of it. Because of it. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. She reached across the table, stopped short of my hand, and waited. I let her. She squeezed once and let go. We stayed for 50 minutes. She asked about the lake house project. Asked how Yolanda handled the project management side. Asked whether we did commercial work or primarily residential. Real questions. Not weather report questions. I answered without measuring every word for impact. When we stood to leave, she hugged me at the door. I let it land. We talked for 11 minutes on the way to the parking lot. She asked about Christmas. I'll come, I said. One condition. If anyone makes a comment about my job being anything less than what Paige does, I leave and we figure out next year from there. Understood, she said, without hesitating. And I'm bringing Yolanda. She doesn't have family here for the holidays. She's been with me since the beginning. My mother's expression did something small and then settled. We'd be glad to have her. Christmas Eve. I drove to my parents' house in Naperville at 3 p.m, Yolanda in the passenger seat, holding a ceramic dish of her grandmother's tamales on her lap because she said she wasn't arriving anywhere empty-handed. You nervous? She asked, when we turned onto my parents' street. Yes, I said. Good. Means it matters. She straightened the dish on her lap. Let's go. My mother answered the door. She hugged me, then turned to Yolanda. You must be Yolanda. I'm Diane. I've heard so much, come in, please. Yolanda handed her the tamales. My mother looked at the dish and then at Yolanda. Please tell me these are what I think they are. They are, Yolanda said. My father is going to cry. My mother said and meant it. Inside, the house smelled like pine and ham and the particular warmth of a house that has been heated all day. My father was in the kitchen arguing cheerfully with the oven timer. Paige was on the couch, quieter than usual. Derek next to her. He stood when I came in and said, Nora? And shook my hand, and I could tell he'd thought about what he was going to say, and then decided not to say any of it, just to shake my hand and mean it. Paige and I hugged, brief, real. We sat down to eat at 5, 7 of us. My parents, Paige, Derek, me, Yolanda, and my aunt who drove up from Peoria. Halfway through dinner, my father set his fork down and said, Yolanda, how long have you been with Nora? And Yolanda started talking, and my father asked 3 follow-up questions in a row, real ones, about project timelines and subcontractor management and what it was like overseeing multiple jobs at once. I watched my father lean forward to listen, the way he used to lean forward on Sundays when Paige talked about her accounts. He'd called Yolanda before Christmas, she'd told me. He'd asked her what he should know about what Callahan Build actually did, so he could ask better questions. He'd asked. After dinner, when Yolanda was talking to my aunt in the living room, my father came and stood next to me at the kitchen counter. We were both watching the room. I want to come see a job site, he said, when it makes sense. Not to get in the way. I want to understand what I should have been asking about for 10 years. I looked at him. We've got a big commercial build-out starting in February in Downers Grove. You can come for a walkthrough in the first week. I'll be there, he said. I nodded. We stood there a little longer. It was not comfortable the way things are comfortable when they've never been damaged. But it was real. We left at 8. I drove Yolanda home through the suburb dark, the Christmas lights on all the houses running together as we picked up speed. "That wasn't what I expected," Yolanda said. "What did you expect?" "More damage," she said. "Still some there, but they're working on it." "Yeah," I said. "They are." February. I was standing on the subfloor of the Downers Grove build-out at 7 in the morning, going over the day's schedule with my site foreman, when my phone buzzed, a text from my mother. "Not Sunday. Wednesday. Good morning. Dad's driving over to the site today if that's still okay. He's bringing coffee and says he won't touch anything." I looked around at the raw space. Open studs, the smell of fresh lumber and concrete, morning light coming through the unfinished window openings. In 3 months, this would be a finished commercial space. Right now, it was all potential and structure. It was the part of construction I loved most, before anything was hidden, when every decision was still visible and nothing had been covered up yet. I typed back. "Tell him coffee is welcome. Hard hat required. I'll find him one." I put the phone in my pocket. Joe appeared at my elbow with a set of drawings. "Framing inspection at 2, he said. "We ready?" "We're ready," I said. I picked up my level and got back to work. My mother called on a Thursday afternoon in March, not Sunday, just to talk. She asked about the Downers Grove project, whether we passed the framing inspection we had, and whether we were on schedule. We were, by 4 days. She asked if Yolanda had found an apartment closer to the office. She had. She asked whether Joe was thinking about retirement. "He says he'll retire when I stop needing him," I said. "Good," she said. "You need people who've been with you from the start." We talked for 16 minutes. She didn't ask about Paige once. When we hung up, I sat at my desk and looked out the office window at the parking lot where 2 Callahan build trucks were loading up for the afternoon. My name on the doors. The same name that was on the brass plate on the Walnut Awards sitting on the shelf above my desk, catching the gray February light in a way that made it look warmer than it was. 10 years ago, I sat at my parents' kitchen table and said I wanted to build things. My mother smiled the closed smile and moved on to easier topics. My sister shrugged and went back to her laptop. I've been building since then, and I'm not done. They spent a long time not seeing it. Now my father shows up to job sites with coffee and asks questions I have to think to answer. Now my mother calls on Thursdays. Now my sister texts me pictures of houses she passes on the street and asks, "Could we fix that?" It's not fixed. It's not all the way back. Grant and Paige and I are still finding the distance that works. The one that has room for what happened without pretending it didn't. But they're trying and they're asking. And for the first time in 10 years, I don't have to make my family wonder about me in order to be seen by them. I never needed the award to know what I built. But I won't pretend it didn't matter to walk across that stage and feel them finally understand what I'd been doing all along. In every house. In every crawl space. In every job site at 6 in the morning before anyone else arrived. I built proof. And then I put it on a shelf and got back to work. I used to think the hardest part was the work itself. The early mornings, the job sites in January, when the wind off Lake Michigan cuts straight through your jacket. The days when something goes wrong and you have to hold it together in front of your crew because you're the one who signed the contracts and you don't get to fall apart. I thought that was the hard part. It wasn't. The hard part was doing all of that and then sitting at a dinner table every Sunday and watching your family look right through it. What I know now, after all of it, is that the way people see you is a reflection of the questions they're willing to ask. My parents weren't cruel. My sister wasn't malicious. They had a picture of what success looked like. And I didn't fit it. And rather than update the picture, they kept looking for me to change. That's not a judgment. That's just what happens when people stop being curious about the people closest to them. Familiarity doesn't always mean understanding. Sometimes it just means assumption. Paige assumed she knew who I was because she'd grown up in the same house. She saw me pick up tools when I was 16 and decided that was the ceiling, not the foundation. She told Derek's family I was the rough edge. She believed that. It wasn't a lie she knew she was telling. She just hadn't looked closely enough to see what the tools had built. And that's the part that required something for me too. Something I had to sit with honestly. I stopped sharing. Year 3, year 4, I pulled back. I told myself it was because they weren't listening, and that was true, but it was also easier than the risk of trying again and being dismissed again. I protected myself by going quiet, and going quiet let the wrong version of me fill the silence. We both contributed to the distance. I own my half of that. What changed things wasn't the award. The award was just the moment when the private became public. When there was no way for anyone in that room to look at a screen showing my name and $2.3 million in revenue and decide it wasn't worth paying attention to. But that moment didn't fix anything on its own. What started to fix things was my father sitting down and writing an email at 5:50 in the morning, admitting he'd failed me. What started to fix things was my mother showing up to coffee without her armor on. What started to fix things was Paige leaving a voicemail where I could hear her abandon the script halfway through and just tell the truth. The award was the crack in the wall. The repair is everything that's happened since. Slowly, imperfectly, one real conversation at a time. I think about Joe sometimes, the way he said, "I know, I looked it up," when I finally told him about the nomination, and how that was the whole conversation and it was enough. There's something to learn from that kind of witness. The people who see you clearly don't need the ceremony to confirm it. They already knew. The ceremony is for everyone else. I built Callahan Build because I love the work. I love the way a raw space becomes something that holds a life. I love the moment when a client walks through a finished house and goes quiet because the thing in their head is finally in front of them. I didn't build it to prove something to my family. But I'll tell you honestly, standing on that stage in Oak Brook with the Walnut Award in my hands and my father's face somewhere in that room running calculations he didn't know how to finish, that mattered. Not because I needed it to. Because 10 years of being invisible at your own family's table is a real thing, and being seen is a real thing, and pretending otherwise would be a lie. I'm still building. The work is the same as it's always been. The difference is that now, sometimes on a Tuesday, my mother calls just to hear my voice. That's enough. That's more than enough.